Hello! This video is on solving absolute value equations. Now an absolute value equation will look something like absolute value lines with some expression inside of it. Things can be on the outside here, and then it's going to equal a number. One of the main things you absolutely need to remember is that we never distribute to absolute value lines. Meaning if we had like a 3 on the outside, absolute value lines x minus 3, you cannot multiply 3 by x and 3 by negative 3. You can't do that. So these are the steps to solve an absolute value equation. Now I know it looks like a lot, but it's written at the top of your sheet. It says isolate the absolute value expression, meaning you want to get this expression between the absolute value lines all by itself on one side of the equal sign. Identify how many solutions the equation will have. If your absolute value expression all by itself equals a positive, you're going to have 2 solutions. If it equals a negative, you're going to have no solutions, and that would be your answer then. And if it equals 0, you will only have 1 solution. Please write that in your notes. After you've identified how many solutions you have, you want to create 2 equations if it equals a positive, create 1 equation if it equals 0, and then if it equals a negative, you can just write the answer, no solution. If it is 2 equations, one of your equations is going to equal the positive answer, and one of your equations is going to equal the negative answer. This will make more sense once I make some examples. Then you're going to solve each equation separately, and then please check your answer. So for the first example, we have the absolute value of x plus 4 equals 12. Our very first step is to isolate the absolute value lines, or the expression. Right now, there's nothing written on the left side, there's nothing written on this right side before the equal sign, so it is all by itself. Now we have to decide how many solutions it's going to have. Well, because it equals a positive 12, we're going to have 2 solutions. Since we know it's going to have 2 solutions, you need to create 2 equations to get the 2 solutions. And this is what I call splitting it. You're going to split this up into 2 separate equations. When you split it, you're going to drop the absolute value lines. So this one is going to say x plus 4 equals positive 12. And this one will say x plus 4 equals negative 12. There's a part in my screen that doesn't write, and it's right there. Then what you need to do is you need to solve each one of these separately. To get x by itself, we would subtract 4 from each side, and we'd get x equals 8. That is one of my solutions. Now the one on the right here, we still need to subtract 4 from each side. X is going to equal negative 12 minus 4 is negative 16. So my other solution is going to be x equals negative 16. Let's look at the next example. We have the absolute value of negative 2x minus 6 equals 16. First, isolate the absolute value lines. There's nothing written on the outside of the absolute value line, so it is isolated. 2, we need to identify how many solutions we have. Because it equals positive 16, we're going to have 2 solutions, meaning we need to split this into 2 separate equations. Next step would be to split it. And once you split it, you want to drop those absolute value lines. The one on the left is going to say negative 2x minus 6 equals positive 16. This one will say negative 2x minus 6 equals negative 16. Then you want to solve each one of these separately. So let's add 6 to each side. Negative 2x is going to equal 22. Divide by negative 2. X is going to equal negative 11. That's one of our answers. This one, add 6 to both sides. Negative 2x is going to equal negative 10. Divide by negative 2. X is going to equal positive 5. So negative 11 and 5 would be my 2 solutions. First step to this one would be to isolate the absolute value lines. Now look at this. We do have a 3 on the outside of those absolute value lines. And the 3 in the absolute value lines, since there's not a sign or a symbol in between them, that means that they're multiplying. And the opposite of multiplying is dividing. So in order to get rid of that 3, we need to divide each side by 3. That means these 3's will cancel each other out, and we're left with the absolute value of x minus 6 is going to equal 6. Now that we have the absolute value lines all by themselves, we need to see how many solutions we have. Since 6 is positive, you're going to have 2 solutions, so we need to split it. X minus 6 is equal to positive 6. X minus 6 is equal to negative 6. Then we need to solve each one of these separately. Add 6 to each side. X is going to equal 12. That's our first answer. Add 6 to each side. Negative 6 plus 6 is 0. X equals 0. 0 and positive 12 would be my 2 answers. Alright, for this one, same thing. We need to isolate the absolute value expression, meaning we need to get rid of anything on the outside. That would be that plus 8. In order to get rid of a plus 8, you want to subtract 8. Let's subtract 8 from both sides. We're left with the absolute value of 3x minus 6 equals 6. Now, since it equals a positive, because we have our absolute value lines all by themselves, equals a positive, we're going to have 2 solutions. So let's split it to get our 2 solutions. 3x minus 6 equals positive 6. 3x minus 6 equals negative 6. And then solve each one of these separately. So add 6 to both sides. 3x equals 12. Divide by 3. X is going to equal 4. Same thing here. Add 6 to both sides. 3x equals 0. Divide by 3. X is going to equal 0 divided by 3, or any number is just 0. So my 2 answers are 4 and 0. Looking at this one, our absolute value lines are all by themselves. There's nothing else there. So we can just look at the answer. Since it equals 0, we're only going to have one solution. So we only need to make one equation. So let's make 3x minus 6 equals 0. The reason why you wouldn't have multiple is because you can't make 0 positive and negative. 0 is just 0, so we can't split it into positive and negative 0. Let's just solve this one. Plus 6 to both sides. 3x equals 6. Divide by 3. X is going to equal 2. 2 is our only answer for this one. Alright, get absolute value lines all by themselves. Oop. This time it is. There's nothing on the outside. So now look at your answer. We have negative 4. Well, absolute value can never equal a negative number, ever, because you can't be negative units away from 0 on a number line, and that's what absolute value means. So this one would have no solution. That's the first thing you want to look at. Once you have those absolute value lines all by themselves, make sure you can have a solution, because if you can't, it makes it a very easy problem. Alright, our very last one. We have negative 3 times the absolute value of 2x minus 7 equals 12. The absolute value lines need to be all by themselves before we can say whether or not it has 1, 2, or no solutions. So we need to get rid of this negative 3. Well, negative 3 and those absolute value lines are being multiplied, and the opposite of multiply is divide. Let's divide each side by negative 3. Means these are going to cancel out, and we're left with the absolute value of 2x minus 7 is equal negative 4. Now that we have the absolute value lines all by themselves, let's look at the answer. Negative 4. Absolute value can never be negative, so we would have no solutions for this one. Thanks for watching.